Hey, what's up guys? This is Technical Tim here, and I want to thank everyone so much who's been liking all my videos and subscribing to the channel. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, I'd really appreciate it if you did. And if this video or any other video leading up to UFC Stockholm gets 50 likes, I'll give all of my picks away for free on the Friday or Saturday of the event. So I think I mentioned it on my report card video, my last video, but I'm going to be going on vacation in a couple days. Currently, it's Wednesday the 22nd, and I'm going out of town on Friday the 24th, going to the Grand Canyon. Girlfriend and I are going, little weekend getaway. And so I'm not going to be sending out any videos Friday through Sunday. I'm going to send out a couple this week, and then I'm going to probably start back up on Monday, I would assume. So just so you know, didn't quit or anything if you didn't see a few videos come out, but I'm kind of excited for a break, to be quite honest with you. I love taping fights, but I'm a little worn out. I'm glad we actually don't have a card this weekend. Usually you don't hear me complaining about shit like that either. But as you guys know, I like to dismiss fights right away that I think are just kind of dumb for betting. And both of these fights sit under the same category of we have four fighters. We got two matchups here, and all four fighters are pretty inexperienced, especially when it comes to fighting UFC competition. And some of them are just really inexperienced, period, in the regional scene, anything. But most of their competition has been all regional fighters, and so it's just it's always hard to get a good gauge on those fighters. It just is. So the point of betting MMA or betting anything is to look at the implied percentages that the bookies give you and take advantage of them. So if the line's off, and if they're right, you just say, good job, the bookies got it right, let's move on to the next one, and we'll eventually get them. A good example of taking advantage of the line is, like the Merab fight, for example, one we won on this year, where I just thought he should have been a little higher of a favorite. We took advantage and we won. That's what we got to do. But the difference between the Merab and Katona fight is those two had UFC competition and they fought actual similar levels of competition. So it's a little easier to compare how their skill sets will match up with each other, where these four fighters is just really, really hard to do that. So let's get into the first matchup, and it's Danilo Belluardo, probably butchering that name, and Joel Alvarez. So let's start with Joel Alvarez. Some of you guys might remember him. He fought Damir Ismagulov. Damir's a Russian fighter, pretty good up-and-coming prospect. But the fight, Joel kind of just stood on his feet and got outstruck and barely threw any strikes. So, there wasn't really much to go off of in that fight, because quite honestly, he was just a little outclassed. And I'm not trying to disrespect him or any of these four fighters on this video. It's totally fine to say whenever fighters are inexperienced, and that's all it is. All four of these fighters just haven't fought really good competition, so their skills aren't as developed. That's all I'm saying. I'm not trying to disrespect these guys. But he, in that Damir fight, he didn't really do much. He kind of just stood there and got out-volumed, so I don't have much to say about that. We got to just be concise where we need to be. And a lot of his other fights have kind of just been him getting submissions, and he spends a lot of time off his back, and that's always a red flag. You guys know my philosophy. I red flag anyone who's going to be off their back, because usually guard submissions, especially in men's MMA, it doesn't work when you get to the UFC. But Joel's fighting a guy who's kind of is probably still regional talent, so it could work against Danilo. If Joel was fighting any other UFC type of competition, I'd be thinking Joel's going to lose that fight. But that's honestly, Joel, he's he likes to be on his back, and he'll accept position, and he'll kind of just throw up submissions. But then again, he's fought some really low-level competition, so it's really hard to know how good he is. And then Danilo Belluardo, he's fought a lot of his fights in Venator, which is an Italian promotion, and Danilo is Italian. but he's kind of a grinder. He likes to wrestle. He goes for takedowns, and that's kind of just like what he likes to do. He's not like a great wrestler, but he's not bad for Western Europe, where there's not a lot of wrestling in that area of the world. But he just, like, I could see his grinding style maybe getting him a win here against Joel. And by the way, these odds are pretty close to even. I think Joel's a slight favorite right now. I don't think I mentioned that at the top of analyzing this fight. But I could see him maybe grinding him out. Who the fuck knows? Like, these guys just haven't fought good enough people to know exactly how this fight will match up. I could see him grinding him out. He does mix up some takedown variety decently, and Joel doesn't really have good takedown defense, and Joel's comfortable with being on his back, so Danilo could grind this out and maybe just get a top position victory path. And he does like to go for some submissions here and there, but then again, it's against a lot of 0-0 fighters, and it's just hard to gauge his skill set. I don't see how you could be confident betting on either guy here. And I could see Joel, like I said, maybe getting a submission here, because even though I don't think guard subs work all that much in the UFC against higher level competition, Belluardo's regional talent, and Joel's subbed a lot of regional talent, so I could see it happening. If there's a good prop on Joel, maybe by sub. It just depends what the line is. I'm sure because he has so many submissions, and I bet the bookies just wiki cap that. Probably won't be like the best return, but I don't know. If you get like +4 or 500, you can maybe take a shot on it. But I don't have much to say about that fight. I'm not going to have any action on it. I think it's stupid to bet fights like this. You can't tell me that you're super confident in one of these fighters. I just don't see how you could do it. Which brings me to my next fight that I'm going to be talking about, and I think this is even more degenerate if you bet this fight, and it is Bea Malecki. She's a Swedish fighter, so she does have the hometown advantage. It's Bea Malecki versus Eduarda Santana. And let me first talk about Bea Malecki. She actually was on The Ultimate Fighter, so she fought Leah Letson, but Leah Letson is just not a super experienced fighter either. She has a few fights in the Tough show, along with she fought in the Tough finale as well, and she has some regional wins, but she kind of got grinded out and in that fight a little bit, Bea, but like she has a striking background, but she just didn't really do much in that fight. And then her only other pro fight, she kind of just like fought another debutante, so it's hard to know how good she is. But she just like, I just didn't see much of a skill set, like a consistent offensive scoring skill set to know like how this fight can go. So I really don't have much to say about her. And then Eduarda Santana she is a Brazilian fighter. I taped her. To find her fights on YouTube, if you guys want to find it, you actually have to, I forget what the name was, but you can't type her Eduarda Santana. What's her name on BFO? On BFO, it's Eduarda Santana, but on Tapology, it's Eduarda Santana. But on YouTube, you had to type in something else. I eventually found all her fights, but if you just get creative with the search, you'll eventually find her. And she fought a lot of low-level fighters, just like all of the other three fighters I've broken down so far, and it seems like she just likes to throw hands, like she likes to strike, and she has pretty good hands. Like, she might have the better hands in this matchup, but she looked pretty unseasoned and kind of raw, and it makes sense. She only has a couple pro fights, and she hasn't fought anyone who's experienced, so she just hasn't gained all that much skill set, because she hasn't had much cage time. So, like, I don't know. She's a slight favorite in this matchup. I think she's like -130. I just don't know how you could cap these fights. Like, if I was a bookie and I was capping these, I'd probably honestly like put it around even money, because who the fuck knows type, like, it'd just be like, let's let the public figure it out type of thing. That's what I would do, because I really wouldn't know. And if you bet these fights, like, I just feel like you can't precisely break down the odds, because they're just kind of low-level fighters. And that's fine. Like, I'm not trying to disrespect them, like I said, but It just is what it is, and these are just kind of dumb fights to bet on. I just don't think it's smart to make plays like this, because it's truly gambling. And I know that's stupid, because I know we gamble, we bet on fights, but we try to get in. I don't consider it gambling whenever you're actually getting the edge on the bookies, and getting the edge on the bookies is just taking advantage of off lines, and we can't know if the lines are off here because these fighters just aren't high level. So I know I'm beating a dead drum at this point, so I'll just kind of stop. But I know this is a shorter video, but I think it's still important to break these down and kind of like mention what their skill sets are, and mention the fact that they haven't fought good fighters, because it's important to recognize these fights and know not to really waste your time. You can tape them. You might find something, like you might find a fight where they fought someone pretty good, even if they're a debuting fighter. And you can kind of see what their skill set is and be like, oh, this fighter is going to win. Like, that can happen on fights like this, but generally it's kind of hard to figure out. And I just don't see how someone can reliably stand behind one of these fighters. And that's all I'm saying. So it's important to still break them down, but I'd weigh off both of these fights if I were you guys. And yeah, my next video I'm going to send out is going to be Gustafsson versus Smith and Evinger versus Landsberg. And I actually have a lot to say about those. And yeah, so that's all I got. Thank you so much for listening, and sorry I didn't have any plays for you, but the layoffs, like I say, are just as important as the plays you make. So it's still important to mention why these fights are layoffs. So thanks for listening. Bye.